I still remember that day like it was yesterday, though it happened nearly 10 years ago. The day my parents made it crystal clear who they truly loved. The day I understood, without a single word spoken, that I was never their favorite. It was prom season, and my younger sister, Chloe, was ecstatic. She had spent months picking out the perfect dress, and my parents had gone above and beyond to make sure she felt like a princess. A $2,000 princess. Meanwhile, I was handed a dress that had been passed down through 3 cousins, stitched and patched in places, a fabric that had probably seen more birthdays than I had. I had tried to convince myself that it didn't matter. That prom was just a high school dance, and that life wasn't about dresses, or money, or parental approval. But standing in front of the mirror that evening, holding the pale, slightly worn dress against my chest, I couldn't help the pang of humiliation that rose in my chest. Chloe twirled in hers, sparkling under the chandelier lights in our house, her dress catching the sunlight like it was made of 1,000 tiny diamonds. And my parents, they beamed, gushing over her, taking pictures, whispering to relatives about how lucky she was, how beautiful she looked. Not a word about me, not a single compliment, not a hint that I existed beyond the hand-me-down dress and the obligatory smile I plastered on my face. I felt invisible. That word, invisible, haunted me for years. Because it wasn't just prom. It was everything. Every award I earned in school was met with lukewarm acknowledgement, if anything at all. Every good grade was expected. Every accomplishment overshadowed by Chloe's charm, her outgoing personality, her effortless ability to make my parents swoon. I tried to shrug it off, to tell myself I didn't need their approval. But at 15, that's hard to believe when your own parents seem to celebrate the air your sibling breathes more than your own hard work. That night, at the dance, I tried to laugh and enjoy myself. My friends noticed, of course. They could see the way my eyes followed Chloe across the room as everyone fawned over her. They could see the fake smile I wore like armor. And when they asked if I was okay, I lied. I said I was fine. It's just prom, I told them. But inside, a storm was brewing. A storm of resentment, of determination, of quiet rage that no one could see. The following weeks were hell. Every conversation at home revolved around Chloe, her dress, her makeup, her dates, her friends. I existed in the background, a shadow. When I tried to talk about school, about my achievements, about my own prom experience, I was brushed off. Chloe's story is what matters, my mother would say. You'll have your turn. But the thing is, I wasn't looking for my turn. I was looking for recognition, for acknowledgement, for a simple nod that said, you matter too. And it never came. I buried myself in schoolwork and sketchbooks. I started designing my own dresses in secret, drawing sketches of gowns I could never afford to wear or imagine having. Each pencil stroke was a rebellion, each fabric swatch a quiet declaration that one day I would be seen. Not just by my parents, but by the world. Chloe could have the spotlight at home. I would have the runway someday. I would create dresses that no one could ignore, designs so brilliant that people would forget the girl who had been invisible for so long. Yet, every night, when I lay in bed, I would hear the laughter of my parents praising Chloe, feel the weight of my hand-me-down dress against my chest, and the hollow ache in my heart would remind me why I was doing this. I wasn't doing it for revenge, not yet. I was doing it for myself, for the little girl who deserved to be seen, for the person I refused to let fade into the background any longer. And so I vowed, silently, with a fierceness that surprised even me, one day they would know my worth. One day, Chloe would look at me and realize that the world outside our family didn't care about the hand-me-downs, the favoritism, or the shallow glow of teenage approval. One day I would shine, and it would be impossible for anyone, not even my parents, to ignore me again. After prom, I buried myself in schoolwork and my sketches with an obsession that surprised even me. At first, it was a distraction, a way to ignore the sting of Chloe's spotlight and the constant favoritism that haunted every family dinner, every holiday, every birthday. But over time, it became my purpose. I began to dream of creating dresses that weren't just fabric and thread, but statements, pieces that demanded attention, that celebrated women like me. Overlooked, underestimated, but full of fire and vision. High school passed in a blur of late nights and secret designs. I worked after school in a small fabric shop, learning how to sew, how to cut patterns, how to turn sketches into something tangible. I wasn't the girl everyone noticed. I was still invisible, but in that quiet corner of the world, surrounded by bolts of silk and satin, I finally felt alive. College was both a challenge and a sanctuary. I got accepted into a prestigious design program, far away from home, and for the first time, I didn't have to compete with Chloe's effortless charm. I was no longer the girl in the hand-me-down dress. I was Emily, and I was determined to make something of myself. I poured every ounce of energy into my craft, working part-time jobs to pay tuition, staying up all night perfecting designs, and entering every contest I could find. Recognition didn't come easily, but it did come. Slowly, then suddenly, a small boutique picked up one of my collections. A fashion blog wrote about my work. And with each tiny victory, I felt a sense of validation I had never received from my parents. Meanwhile, Chloe's life continued as it always had. Effortless, glamorous, celebrated. My parents were still enamored with her every move, calling, texting, sending gifts. I avoided the calls, the updates, and the family gatherings as much as possible. Their world didn't matter to me anymore. I had my own world, one I was building brick by brick, stitch by stitch, design by design. Years passed, and I slowly carved a reputation for myself. My designs were bold, innovative, and unmissable. People noticed me. The fashion world noticed me. And in doing so, I realized something profound. The world outside my family didn't care about favoritism or hand-me-downs. It didn't care about Chloe's charm or my parents' misplaced praise. It only cared about talent, determination, and vision. And I had all three. One autumn afternoon, as I was reviewing contracts in my studio, my assistant handed me an email marked urgent. I frowned and opened it. My eyes widened. It was from Chloe. She had launched a small boutique herself, and she was asking for a collaboration, a chance to work with me, Emily Carter, the invisible sister who had become a force in the fashion industry. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen. The old pang of hurt flared up, sharp and raw. Chloe had always been the favored one, the easy, loved, celebrated one. And now she was reaching out to me, asking for help, perhaps oblivious to the years of dismissal, the countless times I had been invisible while she was celebrated. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. I am generous by nature, after all. But another part of me, the part that had built herself from nothing, the part that had stayed up nights learning, creating, bleeding into my designs while the world ignored me, whispered no. Not like this. I crafted a response, polite but firm. Chloe, I appreciate your interest in collaboration. However, I'm currently focused on my own projects and won't be able to assist. I wish you the best of luck with your boutique. Hit send. My heart raced, not with anger, but with exhilaration. For the first time, I felt the power that comes from choice. Not just in design, but in life. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need Chloe's praise or my parents' recognition. I had created my own path, and it was beautiful, impossible to ignore. Weeks later, my studio received an unexpected delivery. A dress from Chloe herself with a note. I hope we can work together soon. I've always admired your designs. I laughed, quietly, almost to myself. Admiration. From her. After all these years, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. The words I typed were calm, controlled, and deliberate. Chloe, admiration is mutual. However, some lessons are best learned through experience. Perhaps it's time you learn what it feels like to start at the bottom. I didn't send the email. Not yet. I set it aside, like a fine wine that needed time to mature. There would be a moment, and I knew it would be perfect, when Chloe would finally see not just my designs, but the woman I had become. The sister she had always overlooked. The sister who had been invisible. And I would watch, quietly, as the world finally recognized her mistake. It happened sooner than I expected. A fashion gala in New York, the biggest one yet, was my opportunity to showcase my latest collection. It was a room filled with critics, buyers, journalists, and celebrities. Every dress on the runway was a statement, a story woven into fabric, a reflection of the girl I had once been, overlooked, underestimated, invisible. And as the lights dimmed and the music swelled, I felt the familiar thrill of being seen, really seen, for the first time in my life. The night was a blur of applause and flashes. Critics were whispering my name. Buyers were snapping up pieces on the spot. And then I saw them, my parents and Chloe, standing in the back, trying to blend in. My mother's eyes widened, my father's jaw tightened, and Chloe's mouth fell open. She hadn't expected to see me here, commanding the room with a presence she had never imagined. It wasn't cruelty that made me smirk, it was justice. Silent, inevitable, undeniable. I had earned every glance, every compliment, every ounce of attention, without begging, without whining, without demanding to be noticed. I had become undeniable. After the show, my assistant whispered that Chloe had requested a private meeting. I agreed, not because I wanted to rekindle anything, but because this was my moment. The room we met in was small, intimate, the kind of space where truths could no longer hide behind polite smiles. Chloe walked in, all charm and composure, but it faltered when her eyes met mine. She tried a polite smile. "Emily, your collection is incredible. I didn't realize how much talent you had." Her words were empty, performative, and I felt no need to soften them with forgiveness. "Thank you," I said smoothly. "It's taken years to get here. Years of working while being invisible. You probably wouldn't understand." Her face flushed, and I could see the wheels turning. She had always been used to adoration, to being the favorite, to being lifted up without effort. Now she was staring at someone who had earned everything she had taken for granted. "Emily, I thought maybe we could collaborate. I really admire your work." I shook my head gently. "Chloe, I admire you too. But some lessons are better learned on your own. Perhaps it's time you understand what it feels like to start at the bottom, to work for recognition instead of assuming it comes because of charm or favoritism." Her smile faltered. For the first time, I saw hesitation, uncertainty, maybe even a flicker of fear. I let her stew in that moment for just a heartbeat longer before continuing. "I didn't design these dresses for admiration. I designed them for respect, the kind you can't earn overnight or with a credit card. You were celebrated without effort. I wasn't, and that's why I'm standing here, and you're asking for permission." She swallowed, silent, as the truth sank in. The realization of years spent in her shadow, of opportunities she had taken for granted, of the sister she had ignored, all of it hit her at once. And I didn't offer comfort, didn't offer reassurance. That wasn't my job. My job was to be seen, and I had done it spectacularly. Later that night, I watched from the gallery as Chloe's boutique struggled to attract buyers, while my collection sold out before the gala ended. My parents approached, trying to mask their astonishment with polite compliments, but their eyes betrayed them. My mother's lips pressed tightly together, my father's hands trembling slightly as he reached for words he could not find. And I realized, with a quiet satisfaction, that the lesson I had hoped they would learn, that I was not invisible, that favoritism has consequences, that hard work and talent cannot be ignored forever, had been delivered. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I simply smiled, serene, confident, and finally free. The invisible girl had become a force. And in that moment, I understood something deeper than revenge. This wasn't about punishment. It was about recognition, about justice, about finally honoring the years I had spent proving my worth, to myself, if no one else. Later, Chloe sent another message, begging for collaboration again. I didn't respond. There was no need. My presence, my success, my story, it spoke louder than any words ever could. And for the first time, my parents saw me, not as their daughter to overlook, but as a woman who had built herself from nothing into someone undeniable. Someone impossible to ignore. 4 years, I had been invisible. Tonight, I was impossible to overlook. And that, more than anything else, was the sweetest victory of all.